The circumstances that the moon in Capricorn or the 10th house experiences throughout life will inevitably create moments of deep introspection. The entire framework of their reality can be measured through what feels like fluctuating tides of enthusiasm about initiating and building an endeavour through consistent effort of emotional investment, but which then eventually morphs into feelings of overburden and overwhelm of responsibility or duty. It may initially feel exciting, but then a slow progressive futility creeps in over time to overshadow the more warm, light-hearted feelings into colder, distant feelings, until eventually a deep sorrow may hit them, forcing them to completely turn inward to reflect. During those moments, it is highly likely that they prefer to experience themselves in isolation or distance from others, and maybe even feel a sense of loneliness, as they may often feel like they're carrying the burden of not only their own emotional responses, but the emotions of those with whom they interact closely, namely through family and work environments. They may feel like they're unable to find the words to express exactly what they're feeling in the moment. And this is because those moments are sacred realignments which take time to understand, even for themselves. The moon in Capricorn or the 10th house is here to experience depth of feeling. And because much of those feelings and emotions may be deeply suppressed or even repressed under conditioned patterns or expectations from others to behave or act in a certain way, they need to experience their depth in order to understand them. This only usually happens when the moon in Capricorn or the 10th house has invested so much emotional effort into something which either does not amount to the initially anticipated result, or if more and more emotional responsibility and burden is placed on them in the process. Because this moon placement is all too familiar with holding their own emotions and working through them alone, their natural stamina affords them higher emotional limitation. However, we're all human, as are those with the moon in Capricorn or the 10th house. And consequently, they may not realise as they go about their efforts on autopilot that the loads they're carrying or the efforts they're making are either too much for one body and psyche to handle, or they're unnecessarily overloading themselves with emotional responsibilities and expectations which are not theirs to carry. For this reason, nature steps in and creates these deep introspections in order to help them feel the depths of their psyche. The isolated moments filled with feelings of futility, where they ask themselves questions such as, "What is the point?" forces them to find answers about their deeper feelings. They may be incredibly hard on themselves during those moments of reflection, revisiting the past and scrutinising every moment which led to their current state. And those are highly important and necessary moments for the moon in Capricorn or the 10th house. They're not here for an easy time, and this moon placement reflects that, because often they're getting in touch with their higher consciousness, and this can only be achieved through deep, reflective moments, away from the noise of other voices and opinions, and where they eventually find insights which lead to wisdom. Within those reflective moments, they find ways to do things differently which make them feel better. They find deep intuitions about how not to repeat mistakes. They find solutions to problems which lead to better outcomes overall. And they find a whole host of other answers. But because they're so deeply invested and committed in everything which they do and tackle whatever they put their hand to with complete consistency of effort, nature needs to make sure they're feeling life in the process. It's only once they've been through this cycle of contemplation and found their answers that they will be able to come back out again and animate or talk about their emotional experience. It may be therefore often ineffective to ask a moon in Capricorn or the 10th house to talk about how they're feeling during an introspective episode, because they're not generally wired in that way. Their neural pathways are set up by nature to deeply introspect first, by processing slowly, in detail. And once they have their answers, they then find the words to explain afterwards. To the outside world, this can appear as cold and aloof behaviour, but this is often as a result of either not wanting to be a burden on others, since they understand exactly how that feels, or they want to remain in control of their emotional processing and understand who will and will not understand them. So it's respectfully easier to work through it alone, since having to try and make sense of it to somebody else will emotionally overburden them even more. They instead choose to stay quiet as an act of self-preservation. The best thing we can do, therefore, for our moon in Capricorn or 10th house loved ones is to simply be there for them and hold them. Allow them the time that they need to introspect while reassuring them that we're there. Simple presence and touch for this moon placement are healing antidotes to any internal emotional distress. If you're interested in any of my services or working with me, I'm available on the email naturalinauthority@gmail.com or on Facebook Messenger. Thank you.